So let's try to create a resource and assign it an ID. So we will use an API/bands/ID. Remember, our band resource is created at API/bands because the ID is created by the database. We do not supply it. So what happens when we try that? So I'll run a post on that, and we get 405 method not allowed. And that's great because we do not allow this. We do not allow to insert an ID of a band. And this is actually fairly new for 3.0 because in previous versions of .NET Core this was not automatically returning 405 method not allowed. So 3.0 is definitely better in this case. But how would the user know that this is not allowed other than having a status code not allowed? Let's have a look at headers. And you can see that currently we have allow here. Let's hover over it, and it says it's an entity header specifying the supported methods for a resource. And you can see that it only allows get. For this URI, we only allow get. We can only get a band at API/band/band-ID, but we cannot create it. However, we should probably inform the user what actually is and isn't allowed for each of the entities. So for example, when I go to get and go to bands, this gives us all the bands. You can see in the body we have all the bands, and in the headers we do not have that allow key here. And we should add that. We should inform the user that our bands allow for get, it allows for post and head, and we will later also add delete. So how do we add support for that? And the answer is we will use the verb options. Right now, if I go to options and run API/bands, we get method not allowed because we do not have support for options. And by default it tells us currently it allows get, head and post, but again it's the status is 405 method not allowed because options itself is not allowed. So let's add support for it. And this is fairly straightforward. I'm going to create another action, and this is going to be HTTP options. So let's create a public, and this is gonna be an iAction result because this one won't return anything. It will simply return OK if the option succeeds. So it's gonna be iAction result, and I'll call it get bands options. And no parameters are needed. And here we will add into the header the allow key. So we'll go to our response dot headers and dot add. So the first thing we need to add the string, which is the key, and that's the allow key. And then we will add the options that are allowed as comma delimited list. So we want to allow get, we want to allow post, we want to allow delete, which we will add later. We currently also have head, and we just added options. So these are the verbs that are allowed on the bands controller. And then later we could add more if we allow more. And like I said, we will simply return OK if the option succeeds. So let's run this now again. So I'm still in the API/bands to get all the bands, but this time instead of get, I'll use options. Let's send this. And now you can see it informs the user that it allows get, post, delete, head and options. So this is our options verb. If we try to post again into bands/the ID and run this, we still get the same result. It only allows get on this URI. But again, user can go to options and see what is allowed on the bands controller by going to API/bands using the options. So this is really just an information for the user if necessary. In most cases you would probably just use an API documentation, but this is another way to see what verbs are allowed for the user to use for a specific controller or a specific entity. And there is one more thing I want to show you here. Let's go to post and let's create another band. So in my body I have a sample band with the name, founded, and main genre. But this time let's go to headers and uncheck content type. Remember, I told you before that content type needs to be set to application/JSON in order for the result to be properly serialized. So what happens if it is not actually checked? So we are sending this request without the content type. Let's send this. And here we get 4 of 15 unsupported media type. And the explanation is that the request entity has a media type which the server or resource does not support. And you can see in our body we also return status for 15. Once I check it and click send, the resource was created successfully because it was able to serialize what's coming from the body of the request. Alright, so we are now able to create resources, and next let's have a look at validation errors.